If you are working harder than ever, yet your life still feels stuck, this message is for you. If you wake up early, rush through traffic, spend long hours at work, come home exhausted, and still worry about money, then listen carefully. Because what is holding you back is not laziness, and it is not bad luck. It is something far more dangerous. It is something invisible. It's an invisible ceiling. You cannot see it, but you feel it. You try to rise, but something pushes you down. You try to grow, but something blocks your way. You do everything right, yet your bank account barely moves. And slowly, silently, your dreams begin to shrink. You start telling yourself that this is just how life is. You start believing that survival is success. You start lowering your expectations, lowering your standards, lowering your hopes. One day, without even realizing it, you accept a small life, not because you wanted it, but because you were trained to believe it was all you deserved. But what if the problem is not you? What if the problem is the system you are trapped inside? What if some jobs, no matter how honest, no matter how hardworking, will never make you rich? What if effort alone is not enough? And what if today is the day you finally see the truth? This is the story of a man who worked harder than almost anyone, yet stayed poor for years, until one moment shattered his reality and showed him the invisible ceiling above his head. His name was Daniel Carter. He was not lazy, he was not careless, he was not irresponsible. In fact, he was the opposite. He was disciplined, loyal, and dependable. Every morning at 5:30, his alarm rang and he rose from his bed before the sun touched the sky. By 6:15, he was already on the road, driving toward a warehouse on the edge of the city. His job was simple but exhausting. He loaded trucks, moved heavy boxes, checked shipments, cleaned floors, and fixed broken shelves. 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, no shortcuts, no complaints. He believed deeply in honest work. His father had taught him that if you work hard, stay loyal, and keep your head down, success will come. And for years, Daniel trusted that advice like a sacred law. At first, the struggle felt temporary. He told himself that he was paying his dues, that soon he would be promoted, soon his life would improve. So he worked even harder. He stayed late. He volunteered for extra shifts. He helped his coworkers. He never said no. And when his paycheck arrived, he smiled, believing it was a stepping stone toward something greater. But months turned into years. His salary barely increased. His rent went up. Food became more expensive. Fuel costs rose. Every time he saved a little, an emergency wiped it out. His car broke down, his mother got sick, medical bills piled up, credit card debt grew, and slowly the pressure began to crush him. At night, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his small apartment. He thought about his dreams. Once, he wanted to start a business. Once, he wanted to travel. Once, he wanted to build something of his own. But now, those dreams felt childish, unrealistic, dangerous. He began to tell himself, be grateful, at least you have a job. And that sentence became the cage that locked him in. Gratitude slowly turned into fear. Fear of losing stability. Fear of risk. Fear of change. Fear of starting again. So he stayed. Day after day, year after year. One evening, after a particularly exhausting shift, Daniel stopped at a small diner near the warehouse. His hands trembled as he lifted a cup of coffee. His back ached, his legs burned. He felt older than his years. As he sat in a corner booth, he overheard a conversation at the next table. Two men were talking about business, investments, and freedom. They spoke about time, not as something to sell, but as something to protect. They talked about money working for them instead of them working for money. One of them said, I used to work 12 hours a day. Now my systems earn while I sleep. That sentence hit Daniel like lightning. For the first time, a painful question rose in his mind. What if working harder is not the answer? What if I am climbing a ladder that is leaning against the wrong wall? A thought refused to leave him. It followed him home. It echoed in his head while he lay in bed. And the next morning, as he stood inside the warehouse, lifting yet another heavy box, he suddenly saw his life from the outside. Rows of tired faces, bent backs, fast hands, slow progress, endless repetition, and above it all, an invisible ceiling, limit no one talked about, a boundary no one dared to challenge. Daniel realized something terrifying. No matter how hard he worked here, his income would always be controlled by someone else. His time would always be rented. His future would always depend on permission. The system rewarded effort, but only up to a point. Beyond that point, no amount of sweat could create freedom. And that point was far below wealth. It was designed for survival, not success. That night, Daniel did something he had never done before. Instead of turning on the television, he opened his old laptop. He began to search. He read about personal finance. He studied how businesses worked. He watched videos about skills, leverage, and value creation. He discovered that wealth does not come from labor alone. It comes from solving problems, building systems, creating assets, and scaling impact. This new knowledge shook him. He felt anger toward himself for never questioning the path he was given. But he also felt hope, because for the first time he saw another road. Still, fear whispered loudly, "What if I fail? What if I waste time? What if I lose everything?" But the stronger voice began to rise inside him. "What if I stay the same? What if 10 years pass and I am still here lifting boxes waiting for permission to live?" That thought terrified him more than failure ever could. So he started small. He did not quit his job. He did not take reckless risks. He simply changed how he used his time. After work, instead of collapsing into exhaustion, he studied. He learned digital skills. He practiced online marketing, built simple websites. He failed many times. Nothing worked at first. But unlike before, every failure taught him something valuable. Slowly, very slowly, he improved. Weeks turned into months. His progress was invisible to others, but inside, a transformation was happening. He was no longer just a worker. He was becoming a creator, a problem solver, a builder. And with each new skill, the invisible ceiling above him began to crack. Daniel understood a painful truth. Some jobs are designed to keep you alive, not to make you rich. They trade time for money in the most direct, limited way. They create safety, but destroy possibility. And while there is honor in honest work, there is danger in staying trapped in systems that limit your growth. Freedom requires leverage, requires ownership. It requires courage to step beyond the familiar. His journey was only beginning. The road ahead would be uncertain, uncomfortable, and full of setbacks. But for the first time in his life, Daniel felt alive. He felt in control. He felt responsible for his future. And that feeling changed everything. Daniel's days slowly began to change, not on the outside, but within. By morning, he was still the same warehouse worker lifting heavy boxes, but inside his mind, something new was growing. A hunger for more, a hunger for control, a hunger for freedom. Every break time became a classroom. Every night became a workshop. While others scrolled through their phones or escaped into entertainment, Daniel escaped into learning. He studied how money flowed, how businesses scaled, and how ordinary people built extraordinary lives. And the more he learned, the clearer one painful truth became. The world is divided into two groups: those who sell time and those who build value, those who wait for permission and those who create opportunity. He realized that his entire life he had been trained to belong to the first group, but awareness alone was not enough. Knowledge without action is just comfort disguised as progress. So Daniel took his first real step. He created a simple online service offering to build basic websites for small local businesses. His hands shook as he sent his first message to a stranger. Fear screamed inside him. Who am I to do this? What if they laugh? What if I fail? But he pressed send anyway. Days passed, no replies. Doubt grew heavier. Then one evening, a small cafe owner responded. The job paid less than a single shift at the warehouse, but Daniel felt richer than ever, because for the first time, he earned money using his mind, not just his body. That small success lit a fire. He worked even harder, not just at his job, but on his future. Each completed project taught him new lessons. Each mistake sharpened his skill. Slowly, more clients appeared.
Not many.
Not enough to quit his job, but enough to show him what was possible. Still, the journey was brutal. There were nights when exhaustion crushed him. Nights when he questioned everything. Nights when he stared at his screen, unable to think, wondering if he was chasing an illusion. But every time he felt like giving up, he remembered the warehouse, the endless repetition, the invisible ceiling, and that memory pushed him forward. As his income from side work slowly increased, Daniel noticed something powerful. His confidence grew. He walked differently. He spoke differently. He thought differently. He stopped seeing himself as just a worker and started seeing himself as a builder. This inner shift changed how others treated him. Supervisors who once ignored him now listened. Coworkers who once joked about his dreams now asked for advice. But Daniel did not let this feed his ego. He knew he was still at the beginning. One evening, while reviewing his finances, he made a shocking discovery. Despite working more hours than ever, his warehouse income had barely moved in 5 years. Yet his small digital projects, which he did part-time, were growing faster than his main job ever had. That realization hit him like thunder. Effort does not equal reward. Value does. Scale does. Ownership does. And suddenly, the invisible ceiling became clearly visible. It was the limit of traded time. No matter how strong you are, there are only 24 hours in a day. Jobs that sell hours are trapped by this limit forever. This understanding changed his strategy. Instead of chasing more clients, he began building systems, templates, automated processes, repeatable services. He wanted income that did not depend completely on his presence. He wanted leverage. Months of slow progress followed. Stakes drained his savings. Bad decisions cost him money. At times he felt foolish, but each failure refined his thinking. He learned patience. He learned discipline. He learned that true growth is painfully slow and deeply uncomfortable. Then, after nearly 2 years of relentless effort, something finally shifted. One of his systems began generating steady income. Not massive, not life-changing, but consistent, reliable, predictable. And for the first time, Daniel saw a future beyond survival. He saw a path toward freedom, yet fear still lingered. Quitting his job felt impossible. Warehouse represented safety, a guaranteed paycheck, a familiar routine. Walking away meant uncertainty. But staying meant surrendering his potential. He stood at a crossroads, torn between comfort and possibility. Every instinct screamed to stay safe. But deep inside, a quieter voice whispered, "You were not born to live like this." The decision haunted him for months. Then one day, a young coworker collapsed from exhaustion on the warehouse floor. Nothing serious, but the image burned into Daniel's mind. A human body pushed beyond its limits, sacrificed for efficiency. In that moment, he saw his future if he stayed. A slow breakdown, tired body, a quiet resignation. And suddenly, the choice became clear. He handed in his resignation 2 weeks later. His hands trembled as he signed the papers. But beneath it, excitement surged. For the first time, his future belonged to him. The first months were brutal. Income was unstable. Doubt returned. Anxiety kept him awake. But unlike before, every struggle moved him forward. Every effort built something real. Slowly, his systems improved. Clients multiplied. Income stabilized. Then it grew. One day, as he reviewed his numbers, Daniel realized he was earning more in a month than he once made in half a year. Not because he worked harder, because he worked smarter. Because he owned what he built. He understood the lesson clearly now. Some jobs will never make you rich, not because they are bad, but because they are designed for stability, not abundance. They provide safety, not freedom. And while they serve an important role in society, staying trapped in them for life is a choice, not a destiny. Daniel's transformation was not about money. It was about identity. He had crossed from being a consumer of time to a creator of value, from being controlled by systems to building systems, from surviving to growing. And in that shift, he shattered the invisible ceiling that once held him down. Years later, Daniel often returned to the old part of the city where the warehouse still stood. The building looked smaller now. The walls seemed tired. The parking lot was cracked. And the same tired faces still walked in and out each day, carrying the same invisible weight he once carried. But Daniel did not return to feel superior. He returned to remember, to stay grateful, to never forget where he came from and how easily he could return if he stopped growing. He understood something now that few people ever truly grasp. The invisible ceiling does not exist only in jobs. It exists in minds. It is built from fear, comfort, habits, and beliefs passed down through generations. It whispers, "Stay safe, do not risk, do not dream too big, be grateful for less." And over time, that whisper becomes a scream that silences ambition. Most people never challenge it. They accept it. They adapt to it. They shrink to fit beneath it. Daniel refused. His life was not perfect. There were still stressful days. There were still uncertain moments. But now he owned his time. He controlled his direction. He chose his battles. And that changed everything. He woke up with purpose, not panic. He worked with intention, not exhaustion. And he rested without guilt, because his systems continued to grow even while he slept. Slowly, he began sharing his journey, not as a teacher, not as a guru, but as a former prisoner who had escaped. People listened. They saw themselves in his story. The tired cashier, the overworked driver, the underpaid teacher, the exhausted laborer, they all carried the same invisible ceiling. And Daniel's words became a mirror, showing them a truth they had always felt but never named. He told them, "Your job is not your enemy, but it should not be your cage. Your salary is not your value. Your title is not your identity, and your past is not your destiny. You were born with the ability to learn, adapt, create, and build. The moment you decide to grow beyond your environment, you begin to rise above it." He taught them to invest in skills that scale, to learn how money works, build assets instead of only chasing paychecks, to protect their time as fiercely as their health, and most importantly, to believe that more is possible, not instantly, not icily, but eventually. Many tried, some quit, a few persisted, and those few transformed, just like he had. Daniel often thought about the moment in the diner when a single sentence changed his life. One idea, one spark, one shift in perspective, and he realized that transformation is rarely dramatic. It begins quietly, with a question, with doubt, with curiosity, with discomfort. And then, through consistent action, it becomes unstoppable. The invisible ceiling still exists. It always will. Systems will continue to reward survival more than ambition. Comfort will always feel safer than growth. Fear will always speak louder than courage. But now Daniel knew the truth. The ceiling only holds those who refuse to push against it. Some jobs will never make you rich, but they can teach you discipline. They can build resilience. They can sharpen gratitude. They can prepare you for greater things. But staying there forever is a choice, and every choice shapes a life. So if you feel trapped, if you feel tired, if you feel stuck, understand this. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You're not weak. You're standing beneath an invisible ceiling that was never meant to be permanent. And the moment you decide to grow, to learn, to build, to risk, and to believe, cracks will appear. And one day, when you finally break through, you will look down at your old life and realize something powerful. You were never meant to live small. You were meant to rise.